All right, everybody, this video is going to cover the section on the notes that talks about chemicals that cause cellular injury. So we're going to talk about a couple of different classes of chemicals. I'm just going to pick and choose a few examples. All right, so we're talking about chemicals that can cause cellular damage. There are a whole laundry list of chemicals that can cause damage to some degree. So it would include things like volatile organic compounds, for example, or heavy metals could be another example. So there are whole classes of these chemicals. I'm just going to pick and choose a few to talk about and some of the things that it can do. There are a class of chemicals called xenobiotics. The XENO prefix means foreign. So these are foreign chemicals that act like certain biological molecules. So environmental estrogens would be included in as a xenobiotic. Many xenobiotic chemicals are what's called hepatotoxic, so they impact the liver. So they can cause significant liver damage. Environmental estrogens are a unique class of xenobiotics where you have these environmental chemicals that behave like the hormone estrogen, which can impact the reproductive system of both males and females. Okay, so there are other classes of these. I'm just going to pick a couple of them so we can talk about it. Sometimes it's not the chemical itself that causes the damage, but the chemicals are converted to a toxic metabolite, and then that causes some damage as well. So on the heavy metal side of the house, our example could be lead. So where do we find lead? Lead is a toxic heavy metal that can be found in a variety of places. A lot of homes have old lead pipes. There's been a lot of things in the media and the news about lead in drinking water in certain communities where they have an older infrastructure. And what happens is the lead in the pipes kind of leaches into the drinking water and can cause some damage. Lead used to be found in gasoline many years ago. Why, no one's really sure. And in paint. Where lead can cause damage is a variety of systems, but one of the big ones, it can cause neurological damage. Particularly in vulnerable groups like children. Which is one of the reasons why lead was taken out of gasoline, for the reason that it was contaminating the air and it was driving up air pollution. So it was taken out of gasoline many, many years ago. Although in some areas of the world they still use leaded gasoline. And you are no longer allowed to use lead paint in your house because people would paint windowsills with lead paint, and it would chip and flake a little, which happens as paint gets older and dries out a bit, and then children would touch the lead painted windowsills and then put the flakes of that leaded paint in their mouth. So they kind of got rid of that as well, which is one of the things that they assess if you're having a home inspection, for example. All right, another common chemical that causes some damage that we hear a lot about when we talk about it in our homes, of course, is carbon monoxide. All right, so where does it come from? Carbon monoxide comes from fuel combustion. So when you have fuel in your home where you're heating it and combusting it so that it generates some heat, one of the byproducts is you generate carbon monoxide. So in addition, it's when you combust fuel in your car, the same thing. One of the byproducts of the incomplete combustion of fuels is carbon monoxide. The problem with carbon monoxide gas is it is essentially odorless, it's colorless, and so you can have carbon monoxide in your home and not be aware of it, which is why you have to have ventilation systems associated with the heating systems to kind of ventilate some of that carbon monoxide gas and exhaust. It's the same thing in the fireplace. When you light a fire and you light wood, you're combusting fuel. The wood is the fuel. Some of the byproducts that are given off are toxic to breathe in, which is why you open the flue so that the air flows out, right? Some of the signs and symptoms of carbon monoxide intake can be things like headache, confusion, dizziness, fatigue. And again, people may be unaware that it's in their homes, and in some cases this can go as far as to cause nausea and vomiting. But a lot of these symptoms could be written off for a variety of other reasons, of course. So some people may not be aware, especially if they don't open the windows in their home, that the carbon monoxide level in their home is rising. They kind of go to sleep and never wake up. What is the problem with carbon monoxide? So we all know that hemoglobin binds oxygen pretty well. Carbon monoxide competes with oxygen for its binding site on hemoglobin and kind of kicks it off. So what happens essentially is now oxygen is not binding hemoglobin, carbon monoxide is binding hemoglobin, and your tissues are sustaining hypoxic damage because of the presence of carbon monoxide. Obviously, a solution to this is open your windows, ventilate your house, or install a carbon monoxide detector as well. Although in my experience, they don't work that great. Anyway, alcohol. Okay, no level of intake of alcohol has been deemed safe for pregnant women. So, we're going to discuss fetal alcohol syndrome just a little bit. But where does alcohol cause its damage? When someone drinks alcohol excessively, okay, you can have acute alcoholism, right? We have this acute high intake, which can cause depression of the central nervous system to the point that someone passes out, of course. And then you can have chronic alcoholism, which is really going to damage long-term your liver. In addition, long-term abuse of alcohol can also damage the pancreas and the stomach as well. And if you've seen some of my other videos involving alterations to the digestive system, we cover that extensively. I want to talk a little bit about fetal alcohol syndrome. Okay, when a pregnant woman drinks, alcohol can pass the placental barrier and can have an impact in terms of the developing fetus. So, again, there's been no safe level of intake of alcohol for pregnant women. But when someone drinks during their pregnancy, the outcome can be fetal alcohol syndrome. Children born with fetal alcohol syndrome have certain defining facial features, changes in behavior. Some of them have a change in cognitive abilities. And so, unfortunately, the side effects of fetal alcohol syndrome, these outcomes are permanent. And so the way that it's treated really is to modify the child's behavior over a long period of time. But their facial features, they'll have kind of thinner lips, wider set eyes. Those facial features are permanent. Okay. Another heavy metal that's pretty toxic to actually have mercury, which can be found in certain foods as mercury tends to bioconcentrate and bioaccumulate. So it can bioaccumulate, for example, in fish, in their tissues, and then when you ingest the fish, you're ingesting that bioaccumulated mercury as well. Another one is cadmium. Cadmium is found in batteries. The bad thing about cadmium is it hangs out in the environment for a really long time. Its half-life is about 30 years. Where cadmium inflicts its damage is the liver. So there are a whole host of chemicals that can cause cellular damage and different types of cellular damage. But I think you can kind of get the feel for your liver is taking quite a hit with a lot of the intake of these chemicals, right? Because your liver is your site of detoxification of a lot of things. So unfortunately, even things we don't think about as being toxic, acetaminophen can cause significant liver damage and can cause liver failure if left completely untreated. Okay, that's going to do it for chemical injury. Our next video, we'll start covering immune.